World. I'm here at the Transforming Local Government 2018 conference in Tacoma, Washington. I've just come from a keynote by Dr. Maria Church, who's joining me here. Dr. Church is the CEO of Government Leadership Solutions, and she gave a fascinating talk on the role of fear and love in organizations. So she's here to unpack that a little bit for us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. I'm thrilled to just be here at TLG and be immersed in innovation and the camaraderie and the collegiality that exists with all of these rock star local government organizations.
It's impressive.
Cool. It is so impressive. Yes. So we did talk about fear and love and how that shows up in the organization. And I always talk about fear and love together because fear is really the antithesis of love. And when we look at, you can't really experience both simultaneously. We can go very quickly back and forth from one emotion or to another, but where you are having love, you can't have fear. Where you have fear, you can't have love. So it's, I think first and foremost, bringing that into our awareness that the two really are the antithesis of one another. And fear in the workplace is so prevalent and so destructive, and we know it. I mean, we know fear. We know it when we can't have a conversation with someone, like for instance, coming back from TLG, you meet up with some of your colleagues who weren't able to go, you get into the conference room, and you're like so excited to share these ideas, and then somebody bursts into the conference room, whoa, I didn't call this meeting. Who authorized this meeting? You know, that's definitely fear.
That's what fear looks like.
That's what fear looks like. Yeah, and or it could be, you know, trying to get into the office before your boss, really being concerned with like, is your boss there yet? Is he or she not? And then literally like watching out of your office door or window to see when they're gone, so that the perception is that you're there first and that you're there last. And so that when you find that you're more concerned with other people's perceptions about your work than actually your work, you know that there's fear.
And there's no love.
And there's no love. Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, you know, when you're worried about who's going to stab that steely blade in between your shoulder blades, and you're more concerned with that than you are with innovation or customer service or any of those other great aspects and elements of workplaces that are more love-based than they're fear-based, you know you have a problem. So yeah, there are those signs and symptoms of how fear shows up in the workplace for sure.
Now you talked today about where innovation happens, and innovation happening at the intersection of head and heart.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so innovation, I think sometimes for some people's mental models, or in other words, their perspectives, they think that innovation is really in the head space. You know, that it's super intelligent or super imaginative. And yes, those are important, but that will only go so far. So when you're able to combine your head with your heart, those two forces become really powerful, really powerful. I once heard someone say one time that the longest, most arduous journey we'll ever make is the 18 inches from here to here. About that one, right?
Yeah.
So if we are conscious and aware of really bringing both of these together, I mean, we're forces that cannot be stopped. And we know this because we've seen this, well, for instance, in many social movements that we've seen throughout our history. You know, I think of Dr. Martin Luther King, completely intelligent, super smart man, who really was combining that with his heart. You know, he had an idea whose time had come.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, and again, we've seen that time and time again. Even the current Me Too movement, you know, people are saying, let's bring this head and this heart together, because if we really had our heart in it, this stuff wouldn't happen.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So we see that combination becomes a powerful force. And I think what that does is it inspires and sparks these ideas whose time has come, and it allows innovators to bring them forward.
Yeah, it removes some of that fear, so people aren't afraid to share ideas and talk about.
Yeah, and you think, if fearlessness is being bold. Well, bold is it's looking at, say, the scale. So you've got this scale of fear. And we know fear holds us back in big ways and in little ways. And then you've got the scale on this other side that's love. And I think sometimes in our lives, fear seems to weigh more. And it's not until we realize that the love of change or the love of innovation, when that weighs more than fear, well, then we see stuff happen.
So how does an organization get from fear to love? How do we make that journey? What does that look like?
Yeah, great question. So the very, very, very first thing is awareness around it. And it's so funny because it sounds so simple, but it's not simplistic. Simple is profound. A very good friend and colleague of mine used to say that all the time. Simple is profound.
Absolutely.
So very, very first thing is really being aware of how fear is influencing you and your organization, how it's impacting you and your organization, and then having that awareness allows us to act and behave in different ways. And then it's still a choice. Do we still want to choose to behave in a fearful way, or do we want to choose to behave in a more love-filled way? And so I think that awareness is the first thing. And I liken awareness, the awakening of awareness, to, have you ever walked around like in a dark room and you bump into stuff, you're like, ow, you get bruised on the shin or whatever. And then you finally find the light switch, you turn the light switch on, and then you realize, oh, that was a coffee table that I walked into. And then it's really hard to actually go over and flip that switch off again and stumble around again in the darkness. So I feel like awareness is a lot like that. And so we turn that light switch on. And so people that have been behaving or acting in fearful ways, once that light switch is on, it's more difficult to be ugly to people. It's more difficult to behave in a fearful way. So that's absolutely number one. And I think secondly is really, now that you're in awareness, is to recognize, how is this adversely affecting me, my team, and the organization?
Yeah.
And so we see that it shifts focus away from work. It is absolutely the number one killer in innovation, for sure. And we have to recognize that fear does work. Fear will motivate people in a direction. What they forget to tell us about fear, minor detail, is that it's not sustainable. You can't sustain fear. We cannot be sustained in that heightened stress level for long periods of time. And so what happens when we're experiencing fear is we leave the organization figuratively, we disengage, and literally we start beefing up our LinkedIn resumes. We start really making those connections and networking so that we can plan our escape. And so I think when we walk through the doors of awareness and we realize how this is destructive to our team and our organizations, then we can really move into the third step, which is, how do we want to be? Who do we really want to be? Because that's all about our choice. Right? And so really getting very clear in who you are and who you want to be. And a lot of that goes back to why we do what we do. So why did we choose this industry versus that industry?
Why did we choose local government?
Right.
Why local government?
Why local government, right? And so when we can then connect back again with our heart, because we're already there in the headspace.
Yeah.
We typically come to work in the headspace. And so oftentimes as leaders, we're bridge builders. And so to help to connect both ourselves and our people back to their why, then it's nearly impossible to be in that fear space for long periods of time. I mean, we're human, we might slip.
Yes.
Right, but if we're creating that kind of culture that fear's not acceptable, then our colleagues will in a loving way remind us that that's just not acceptable here any longer.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. I've had a chance to talk to a lot of the local government innovators here this week, and young people, older people, but ask them that question, why did you get involved in local government?
Yeah.
And to a person among this group, at least, it's because, they wanted to make a difference. They wanted to have an impact on their community. They wanted to help people in their community.
Yeah.
So,
And knowing that, it's easy peasy then to say when they're in a fearful place, how is this making a difference in the community?
impacts inside, outside.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's easy to call each other on that then when we start to spin into that tornado of fear.
Yeah. So you talked about as a takeaway four elements that are found in innovative organizations.
Yes.
What are those?
Yes. So this is fascinating data out there and literature. So there's two Japanese researchers, Nonaka and Nishigishi, who have done extensive research on what makes one organization more innovative than another. And so what they found in all of those organizations that were really, really innovative, this Japanese term called BA, which is spelled B-A, super simple. And they found that BA existed in all of the innovative organizations, and those organizations that were not innovative, BA was nowhere in sight. So, okay, they're onto something, right? So it's like, okay, well how did you get BA to come on over to your organization? And so they started to peel back the layers of those organizations that were really innovative. And what they found was all of those organizations that were innovative that had BA, that there were those four elements there. And those four elements are love, care, trust, and compassion. So love, care, trust, and compassion had to be present for BA to exist. Or in other words, love, care, trust, and compassion has to be present to innovate. And I mean, you think about that. If you have an organization that is fear-based, where obviously BA is not going to be, you're not going to have the trust. If you're in an organization where you're not trusted to be innovative, then you're not going to be innovative, because we know that very rarely are we innovative right out of the gate, right?
It takes a little while to get ideas going.
It does.
And
to find
the right
that
idea, right?
Exactly, or to tweak that right idea 2, 3, 4, a dozen times. And so I don't know what the formula is, but I think we've all felt the formula at some point in time that it takes X number of failures to get your innovation.
Yes.
And that's part of the innovative process, right? And I had mentioned in the talk, of course, if we didn't have failures, we wouldn't have the Post-it note, we wouldn't have bubble wrap, we wouldn't even have the pacemaker. Isn't that something? We wouldn't even have the pacemaker. So, your culture has to allow, it has to trust and allow for mistakes to happen. And so we think about that, how simple that concept is and how profound it can be. Because if you're not trusted to have a mistake, then hello, you're not going to innovate. You're not going to put yourself out there. You're not going to try new solutions. It's really key.
Yeah. And those elements really form the foundation for the kind of organization that everyone wants to work.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Because let's face it, we have a generation of people who don't make movie reservations, dinner reservations, buy something on Amazon or another online vendor without reading reviews.
Trust.
Right? That's the trust.
Absolutely.
Now, if we're looking at an organization where we want to spend 8 to 10 hours of our day, the vast majority of our waking hours, this generation is not going to choose an organization that the reviews are not good. And our reviews are good when we're in fear-based organizations, right? If we're in love-based organizations where there's innovation, bouncing off the walls, where you feel trusted and supported to be creative, to try new things, to innovate, well, which organization are people going to choose? That's a no-brainer.
Yes. Bring yourself, your whole self to work.
Whole self to work.
Opportunity
Mind,
to be
body,
your best.
spirit. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, for so many years we were taught to compartmentalize our lives. And that really never felt authentic to me.
Yes.
Because I'm a whole person. And I have a personal life, I have a spiritual life, I have a recreational life, I have a professional life. It's all me. And I love when we're in cultures that celebrates that.
Yes.
You know,
where we're allowed to bring all of it to the table and all the insights that come from all those different pieces of who we are.
yes, because when we compartmentalize, we're not bringing our whole selves.
Right.
And we might be missing something really relevant.
Yes.
Yeah, I
And our
agree.
organization is too. Right?
Exactly, right?
Yes.
Yeah, let's make it a win-win-win.
Yeah. It has been so delightful to have you here
Thank
and
you.
chat about this stuff. Really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure. Really,
Thank
it's been
you.
my pleasure.